Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions.
Hi, I'm Eric Grant with Sailrite. In this tutorial video, we're going to show you how to build a two-bow Bimini Skin Kit. This is the fabric and obviously the zippers for the pockets and so forth. The frame is not included in this, but we also have a frame kit. Now, this two-bow Bimini, we're going to be building it out of a Sattler Yachtmaster fabric. It has a right side and a wrong side. Yachtmaster fabric has a durable, water-resistant finish on the back side that makes it highly water-resistant and also more abrasion-resistant. This kit is available in a few different fabric choices, and some of those fabrics don't have a right side and a wrong side because both sides can be used. But we have a separate video that explains exactly the advantages and some of the differences between those fabrics, so check it out in the description below.
To make this Bimini Skin Kit, you will first need to have a tubing frame erected on your boat or wooden platform like we do here. We will be patterning to make this Bimini Skin Kit on this Sailrite 1-inch stainless steel Bimini frame. More information and a tutorial of how to assemble the frame is found in the Bimini Frame Kit link in the description below. The construction procedures for this Bimini shows our most recent techniques, which helps make the construction much easier and results in less wrinkles at the corners than in our past Bimini tutorials. Let's get started. The first step is patterning on the erected frame.
So we have our two-bow 1-inch stainless steel frame set up on our wooden platform. Now, if your Bimini has a backstay that goes through the top, you'll need to really set this frame up on your boat so that you know exactly where the backstay comes through, or backstays, it could be plural. Now, see how we did the bows here? This is a two-bow frame. And this is the primary bow. It goes down all the way to the deck hinge. This secondary bow, we put it way down here, but if you wanted some space here, you could actually put it up here at almost a 90-degree angle to this. It would probably not be totally 90 degrees, but it does actually look really good that way. So you would basically just cut that shorter. That's typically how most of these frames are set up, though the principles for building the skin kit are going to be exactly the same. And if you've noticed here, we've already put our strapping tape on the bow and we struck our line on the frame with this on the floor, as you've probably seen in the Bimini frame kit video. If you don't know where that video is, we'll post a link in the description of this video below, because we really want you to strike a line on the frame with the frame on the floor, and that video shows that. This is the center of our frame, and we have it strapped at, for us, this is 42 inches from bow to bow for this two bow, and we need to pre-tension this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark on the tape right here with a marker so that I know how much I'm tensioning it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to release this tape and release it from the bow. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to push on the bow at the center position, and I want to push it in at least an inch or an inch and a half. And I'm not going to measure it, I'm just going to go by eye. But you can see here that my mark is approximately an inch and a half. Then I'm going to wrap it around and secure it well. And I might actually take another piece of tape and just make sure it isn't going to give up the ghost. That's probably going to be fine. And you must do that with these extra reinforced. These have a couple bands of strapping tape that are going down to the strap eye. These must be secure and able to tension your bows. But now this bow is tensioned in the center. You notice that we struck the line on top of our filament strapping tape. That way it's easy to remove the double-sided tape. This is the double-sided tape that comes in the kit, and I'm going to put it right alongside of that marker mark. So I'm going to do this carefully. It doesn't necessarily have to be done this way, but that way that mark's not going to come up at all. And I'm going to do that on the other side as well. And I notice I'm coming down here to approximately where I want the skirt to stop. I haven't decided for sure, but I definitely want enough that I'll be able to cover the fabric that's going to cover this edge. And once I'm done with this bow, I'm going to go to the primary bow and do the exact same thing. Okay, Bill and I are going to take the double-sided tape off on the primary and this bow here. And we'll get all the way over there once we get there. So we're holding the Sailrite pattern material here with it folded in half. And I want to try to make sure I don't have any folds on the corners. So I think this is going to do it. So this is going to go all the way to the middle position approximately, Bill. And we're just going to hold it up and set it down. Two people make this a lot easier. Make sure you have at least 1 or 2 inches on your side. There we go. Yeah, that's good right there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, and then we're going to just flip this side all the way over. Peel off the rest of our transfer paper, and then we're going to tension it a little bit. And this doesn't mean that it's exactly where I want it, but it's close. So thank you, Bill. That's all I needed from you. Now we're going to, or what I'm going to, go over here, and I'm going to start to pull out any wrinkles and so forth. Like here's a big mess here. But this pattern material is relatively stiff compared to what we used to use. And I really like it for Dodgers and Biminis, and it comes in your kit. So my goal is to tension it down to where the skirt level is going to be and make sure that it's tight. And sometimes what I do is I start at the middle here. You can see a bubble here, and I actually just kind of pull it up from the double side tape and go out to the port or starboard side and do this all along it. And then I'll, once I do this, that looks pretty good right there, I'm going to go over and start here and do the same thing, and then I'm going to start in the middle there and go that way, and then in the middle there and go that way, and we'll get it nice and tight. See, there's a fold from when Sailrite had it shipped to me, and it's almost on the corner. I'd rather have that up a little bit further, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal. It's better to have the folds away from your radiuses. This is the primary bow here, so this is the aft edge. This is starboard, so we're going to mark south over here, starboard out. I'm also going to come over here. We're going to mark the center line that we marked on the bow, which I could see through here because I marked it on top of the strapping tape. And we want to go into, I'm going to go over here into where we're going to have our seam allowance. This is the aft edge, so I'm going to put aft on it, and I'll put forward over there. Over here, this is port out, so pout. Now you can have your skirt edge stop anywhere you'd like. I mean, here would be blocking a lot of visibility. So usually it's up here, just a little bit below the radius of the arch. So again, this is preference. All I'm going to do is I'm going to mark a line here like that, and then I'm going to use a level, and we're going to mark over here, making sure it's level. So I'm using the level to make sure the bubble is right where I want it, right about there. Good, and I will mark it right there. Now we're going to do this on the other side, but first we need to take a measurement. So all the way to the floor, I get 43 3/4. I'm just going to put a mark right there, and we're going to go to the starboard side and do the same thing. 43 3/4 right there. We could just use this over here as well. That's the way it's level, and we'll mark it right there, skirt edge. Now when I'm done sewing, what you typically find is the fabric will shrink up. So even though we want it there, it's probably going to end up right about here when we're done sewing, and you'll see that later on. In the past, what we used to do is just use a marker on top of our pattern material and mark directly on top of this line that we struck on the bows, but we find now that it's easier and the pattern is better if you just use masking tape. It's not included in the kit. And you just go right over the top of the lines. Make sure you do it on the inside because you want the wrinkles to be on the inside, not against the edge. So we're going to go right on top, and if you make a mistake, you just pull it up and reposition it. And now you don't have any deviating at all when it comes time to pattern this. So we're going to do this here, and I will show you starting on the other side because we still want to put this on the inside every time for this two bow. Okay, so we are done with patterning. We have our tape on and it's beautiful. I looked down it to make sure there's no deviance in the tape. It looks nice, even though this isn't a straight edge. It actually has a little bit of a curve to it. Backstay. If you have a backstay, this kit doesn't come with the supplies for the backstay, but we do have a kit that you can add to install either a single or a double backstay. If you had a backstay, what you would do is, we have a video that covers that, but what you would do is you'd have to slit your fabric to allow the backstay wire to come through, and then what you'd do is you'd make sure the fabric is next to each other on the slit, and then you'd mark the backstay. I'm going to mark this acting like this is a backstay. So let's say my wire was right there, and what I would do is I'd put basically a bullseye to indicate where that backstay is coming through the top, and then we'd have this slit all the way down. So that's how you do a backstay. You can always order that if you want to add that to this 2-bow Bimini kit. Okay, now we're simply going to remove the pattern from the frame, and if this is out in the sun, you probably even want to remove the tape, but for us we're inside, so I don't have to worry about it. So we're going to go ahead and release the center. Now everything is going to fall down if I don't hold on to it, but you're going to notice that this is going to pop big time, so watch. There's our difference right there. You can see the end of the tape.
In this chapter, we're going to add the seam allowance to our pattern.
So now we have our pattern on our table, and we're going to draw the skirt edge from mark to mark. This is why we didn't put a line on the pattern material, because you can just use a straight edge and you can go across with your Sharpie marker like that. Now we have to do the same thing on the port side, just in the same manner, and we do have to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance to the outside of this line, this tape, and this tape. This is our masking tape, and remember we put it on the inside, so our 1/2 inch seam allowance goes there, and I'm using the Sailrite clear acrylic ruler to do this, and for straight edges it's pretty easy, so I'm right on the tape here, and I want to use a small marker like this just to be really precise. And notice that next mark is off a little bit because it's taking a curve. So what I like to do at curves is just basically make dashes with the line, like right here, the line's right on top of the tape. And then we just do a little dash like that. It's at more straighter ways. None of this is straight, but at the areas where it's straighter, I'll just strike a line, making sure that this is right at a 1/2 inch every time I do it. So I'm going to do this here, and then we're also going to do it over here on this side. So now we're going to cut the pattern out with a pair of scissors around the lines that we struck. In the past, I used to use a hot knife to cut both through the fabric and the pattern, but if you want to be precise, this is the way to do it.
We'll use this pattern now and transfer it to the fabric that you've selected for your Bimini Skin Kit.
So this is our Yachtmaster fabric. It could be made with other fabrics as the process is still the same, but Yachtmaster has a regular acrylic outside surface, and on the underside, it has a durable water-resistant finish that makes it highly water resistant and also very abrasion resistant. In fact, Yachtmaster has over twice the rated water resistance of standard marine grade acrylic fabrics. This kit is also available in other marine grade fabrics, and we have a separate video down in the description below that will explain what those other fabrics are. Since we're using a Sattler Yachtmaster, it has a right side, this is the outside, and a wrong side, the urethane side. The urethane side faces down. If we didn't have a right side, wrong side fabric, it wouldn't matter. We put our pattern material down so that sout and pout are facing out, and this is the factory edge, so I'm just going to go ahead and go all the way up against that edge since we're not adding anything there at all. And then I'm going to put some sandbags on it and make sure that my fabric is within the edge of the fabric all the way down here. And it is. Now you could use a hot knife and just cut on it and hopefully do an accurate job, but I'm going to use this chalk and go around the perimeter, and that way I can be really, really accurate. So now that we have it marked there, all I need to do is just keep my sandbags in position, pull the fabric back like this, and then I can mark the other side, making sure that nothing moves. Now we do want to mark the center position here. There's our line, so I'm going to mark it like this, and I'm also going to write forward. and I'm going to write pout. I'm going to write pout on this. This is chalk, so it will eventually come out, P-U-T. And we'll mark the center line over there, and we'll mark out over here. Okay, now that we have it marked all the way around, I'm going to raise this up, and I'm going to use my hot knife. This is a Sailrite edge hot knife, and we're using the precision cutting foot and blade. And this seals the edge of the fabric. So just try to do this nice and straight. Release the trigger every once in a while to let the blade keep from becoming cherry red.
In this next chapter, we're going to do the patterning for the tubing pockets. These are the pockets that will have zippers on them. Here's a look ahead at what that zippered pocket will look like on the underside of our Bimini top.
This is a urethane coated side, so it's facing down. Outside surface is facing up. So we want outside surfaces to face each other. Right now, Sout is up, so we need to flip this around so that Sout is facing down. Okay, so now notice that Sout is down over there and Pout is down over here. So we're on the port side here, and we want to make a pocket that's 4 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just use a clear acrylic ruler here at the curve, and I'm going to mark it at, let's say, 5 inches just to be safe. So I know that I need to at least pattern up to that point. So I'm going to put this close to that edge, leaving a little bit of excess, and we're going to make sure that it's at least 5 inches of fabric all the way over here, even though we only need 4. I'm going to put some weights on this, and I will strike a line here. This is our scrap fabric. Outside surfaces are facing each other, and we're just going to mark along this edge all the way over here. I'll mark this all the way back to at least 4 inches. So, and then we're going to go all the way along this line, then we're going to cut this out with a hot knife, and I'll show you what we do over here. Now we also have to mark the center here. So you can see the center line here. I'm going to put a mark there. This is the aft. It says aft through here, so I'm going to mark this aft. Okay. And then over here, this is the starboard over here. So we're going to label this with an S, and over there is a P. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut out, and I can only cut obviously the ends and the edge we marked. We still have not made it 4 inches, but as soon as I cut this out completely, then I will show you how we get the 4 inches. This is the edge we cut. There's some excess down here. I'm going to use the canvas patterning ruler to get it at 4 inches, and I'm using a scribe ball for this because it just fits better in the hole. So hold on to the fabric and just go along this edge like this, and you should have, and if there is a little bit of a burn stuff, you could actually just take this and do that. It knocks the burn stuff off, and then it's a little bit easier to travel along that edge. And this gives you a line that's parallel, that's 4 inches from that shapely edge. It's a little bit hard to get the 4 inches to go this way, so what I do is I just eyeball this. If you want to, you can measure it, and you just measure it by making sure that you're in line with that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the hot knife, and we are going to cut along that line that we just struck all the way down. Okay, so we have our pattern down on some scrap fabric again. Port is facing down, which means this is port side, so I'm going to put a P over here. We're going to make the tail for this the forward side. We're going to mark the center, mark it forward, mark our line, mark down at least 4 inches. Then we'll use that canvas patterning ruler to make it 4 inches and cut it out, just like we did before. So I'm not going to show all this.
We'll be making hang-down tails for the forward and aft portion of our Bimini next. And here's a look ahead at what the hang-down tail looks like.
Okay, I put my pocket on top of some more fabric because we need to make hang-down tails. And this just determines basically the length that I need, and I am going to make it extra long. So let's just move the fabric, that way you can kind of see what's going on. Pretty easy to do this like this on a table. So that's in position. There's the end. And what I want for my hang-down tails is about 10 inches of extra fabric. So I'm going to stop it right about here, which is about 10 inches. Then we can remove this and set it aside. So we're going to make 2 6-inch strips. So I'm just going to use a clear acrylic ruler, And we'll just do this. Obviously, we'll extend it down, and I'm going to do one right above it. So one for the forward and one for the aft portion of our bimini, all the way down. And we're also going to cut this out with a hot knife when we're finished. This is the factory edge, so I don't have to worry about it. This is the tail. This is the 6-inch strip. We have 2 of them, and we need to do the same thing to both of them. So this is the urethane side. This one is Sattler Yachtmaster, so you got to pay attention to that. So you want to put the seam stick that comes in the kit along one of the long sides on the urethane side. And what I like to do is I like to take the Sailrite canvas patterning ruler to adhere it down well. Once I get it on, I'm going to go all the way to the end. We're going to peel up the transfer paper, revealing that double-sided tape. This is an acrylic double-sided tape, not a rubber base, so it doesn't yellow, especially with lighter fabrics. That's really important. And we're going to baste it together by folding it directly in half. We're going to do this all the way down its length. What I like to do is, again, crease the fold. That way it stays folded. And I like to apply pressure to the double-sided tape once I have it basted. So we're going to do this all the way down the length, and we'll do the same thing to the second one. We're going to test the tension of the sewing machine, so I have some scrap in here. And what we want is we want the knot more on the bottom side than we do the top, if anything, but we still want it to look good. So I don't see the knot there. The bottom side, I can see the knot just a little bit. I don't have to mess with the tension, it's perfect. And we're sewing a 6mm straight stitch. So this is our tail, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this raw edge, not the folded side, just so that I make sure it doesn't come up. And I'm going to put that stitch so that it's not even visible in our assembly when we're done. So I'm going to put a magnetic guide down like that, and that stitch is going to be about an 1/8 inch away from the edge, so it'll never be seen because we're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I think I'll move it over just a little bit more to make sure that I don't ever hit it. I'm not going to do any reversing here. I'm going to sew down this edge, making sure that it holds it together when I baste it to the top. And we'll do that to this one and to the second one.
We'll go back to those pockets, reinforce the ends, and hem the rest of them.
Okay, you can tell this is my aft pocket, and there's our notch for the center, forward pocket notch here. This is the outside surface. The urethane is down. We want to turn it so the urethane is up on both of them. It'll be like that. Okay, and what we need to do is we need to get some scrap fabric and reinforce this area for a snap that's going to go into our frame. So this is my scrap fabric. The urethane is facing up just like this, and I'm just going to put it over here right where the curve begins, and it doesn't have to be exact. And I'm going to trace around this to that juncture, right to there, and up to here. And we'll just call this A and this A so we know it goes there. So along the side, we need to take away 3/4 inch because we're going to hem it to 1/2 inch. And 3/4 is just a safety thing. If you wanted to do a 1/2 inch, you could, but 3/4 is going to make it a lot easier. So I'm just following the shape using the clear acrylic ruler to right about there. So in other words, I'm not going to cut on this line. I'm going to cut on this line, this line, and this line with a hot knife. We're going to flip this over because we're going to baste this to the urethane side. This is the non-urethane side if you have a fabric like the Sattler Yachtmaster, and we're basting the basting tape on that side so that we can flip it so the urethane side is up. So we patterned it to fit perfectly like this, and it's about 3/4 inch away from this edge. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with this one. We'll call this one B, and then we'll see C and D over there following this exact same procedure. Make sure that the concave side is the side that has the extra material, because this is the side we're going to fold a 1/2 inch in. So same thing over here. So this is the urethane side, and in the concave portion here and the concave portion here, I'm going to use a ruler, and on the straight portion, I'm going to go ahead and mark it at 1 inch. In other words, I'm not 1 inch here. We're going to make a 1/2 inch hem all the way down this length. So at this location, I mean, if I want to do that, when I got to move the clear acrylic ruler to get that as I go. So I know that I'm marking on top of my patch. Don't worry, we're only folding to this line. We're not folding on that line. Okay, we're going to do that on this edge all the way down and on this edge all the way down. Next, I'm going to put double-sided tape on this concave edge close to the raw edge all the way down. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. After I've used the canvas patterning ruler to adhere it down well, you can use a heavy object if you don't have that. You peel off the transfer paper and we're going to fold to that line just like this all the way down its length. And because we struck it, it's pretty easy to do this. And we're going to do the same thing to that second one as well. We're not going to show any more than this, but I do recommend that you do crease it well after you do baste it in place to make sure that it doesn't give up the ghost. Here we have to create a hem on the ends, and it's going to be a 1/2 inch hem, so I'm going to mark over to 1 inch and mark it there. We're going to cut this little tail off just with a hot knife to make it flush like that. I'm going to put double-sided tape on it, and then we're going to fold this back. And I'm going to probably use a clip to hold it in place. So we're going to do the same thing on all the ends, okay, not just this one. And make sure you fold to the inside like I am here. So like that. And then we're going to clip it so it stays.
On the sides, we call that the skirt. We're going to add facings. This is reinforcement, and also if you ever wanted to add enclosure panels, you could sew the zippers onto that. This facing will add a stitch along the outside skirt edge.
Okay, this is our scrap fabric on the bottom, and this is the top. Notice it says pout. I'm going to turn it, since this has a right side and a wrong side, because it's Yachtmaster, so the outside surfaces are facing each other. And we're going to do this as our facing strip for the skirt. So the skirt's going to be 3.5 inches tall, so I'm just going to mark this, and we're going to mark along here all the way to here, going at least 3.5 inches in, and then I'll show you what we do. So I'm going to put the clear acrylic ruler at 3.5 inches on that line that we just made. It's straight, and mark all the way down here. And what I'm going to do, because we're going to have a semi-flat felled seam here, I'm going to mark in about 3/4 of an inch just to make sure I'm staying out of that. So this is 3/4 of an inch, and we're actually going to cut on that. And we're going to do the same thing over here after I mark this. I'm going to cut this out with a hot knife. This is the, what was that, port? I don't know, port or starboard side. We need to do the exact same thing to the other side for this skirt. So this is, we need one for each side. This is the top. This is the outside surface. We're going to flip it to the bottom side. This is Sattler Yachtmaster, so it has the coating on the facing up. This is the port side, so I'm going to lay it down and I'm going to grab the port facing strip. This is a starboard one, it'll go over there. And it's going to go on, so the outside surface, that's the outside surface, this is the urethane side, is going to go on like this. Go on 3/4 inch here and 3/4 inch here, but first we have to hem this top edge. So to do that, I'm going to use double-sided tape, and I'm going to put it along the long edge, because it's got a angled edge, so this edge is shorter. I'm going to peel off the transfer paper, and then I'm going to baste it to approximately 1 inch, or a 1/2 inch, I'm sorry. If you'd like to mark it, you can, but I'm going to just go by eye, which works pretty well, like this all the way down. And we're going to do the same thing to the starboard one as well. Now I'm going to put double-sided tape on top of that hem and also this bottom edge. Okay, and then this is going to go in, and you can measure if you'd like, but as long as they're consistent on both ends as far as the spacing goes. This is going to allow for our semi-flat felled seam, and it's right up against this edge. Just go down like that, and then we're going to do the starboard side. We're over at the machine here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew into this hem, and I'm going to use the left side of the presser foot, And I'm actually going to start over here because nobody's going to see the reversing that I do here, because that's going to be the semi-flat filled seam. I don't need to reverse into the actual fabric, but I want to make sure my stitch stays in place and my needle's in center position. So I just want to follow this edge all the way to the other end, and we'll reverse just like we did there at the beginning, and we'll do the same thing to the other end, starboard end. This is the port
If
end.
you have backstay slits that need to go into your bimini top, watch this chapter. If not, skip it.
Now in the creation of our pockets, before we sew on the zipper, what I want to do is I want to get the bimini top, put the pattern on top. This is the aft edge, line up the center marks. If you had a backstay slit, that's what all we're talking about here. Remember, this is our fake backstay slit. We don't have one in here. What you would do is typically the backstay would just go straight back. It could go at an angle, but let's just pretend this is the backstay slit. So there'd be a mark here coming down from that location. I can't get my fat fingers to do this. So let's pretend this is where the backstay zipper will come from that spot all the way down. So I've marked it here, and we have a separate video showing all this. I just want you to know that this is what you would do prior to installing the zipper, is you take the aft pocket, which is this one, you'd put it on. I've already notched the center mark. There's the center mark. You put it on the center mark, and then you would locate the location for the backstay zipper, which is right there. You measure 1.5 inches over here and 1.5 inches over here, and you would cut it basically right there, and then you'd hem these ends over like that video is going to show. So you'd have a 3-inch gap here, which means that the zipper would, you'd have an extra zipper that would come in the kit that you would buy for the backstay, and it would stop here and start here again. So you'd have 2 zippers. Now if you had 2 backstays, you'd slit it over here and do the same thing. So the point is, if you have a backstay slit, you need to click on the link down in the description that shows the backstay kit that you can buy separately when you buy this Bimini Skin Kit, and you can watch the video that's on that backstay slit kit.
It's now time to add the zippers to those pockets.
So if you don't have a backstay slit, keep watching onwards until the end of this video, and we'll show you how to do all the pockets and so forth. If you had a backstay slit in your Bimini top, then I assume that you've already watched the tutorial on how to install that backstay slit, and you've also installed it in your Bimini top. So now you come to this chapter. Now this chapter is going to talk about how we put the zippers on the pocket, and these are the full lengths of the zipper, assuming there's no backstay. So technically, the process of installing the zipper on the pocket, putting the tail, and also the pocket on the edge of your Bimini is repeat of what we just saw in the backstay slit. However, you still have to put a pocket on the forward portion of your Bimini, and so these chapters that are coming up are basically a refresher on how to do that, but it's basically the same process as what you did with the backstay slit. So the choice is yours. You can skip this chapter and the next, or watch it and refresh yourself with the process.
And here we go.
This is my zipper, okay, and I have 2 of them for this tubo. The slider puller is up like this, and we want to put double-sided tape on this side. So I'm going to flip this all around. And here I'm not going to use a 3/8 inch seam stick. I'm going to use the 1/4 inch, which is included in your kit. And you may not need all the zipper, but I'm going to put it on as though you do. So we're going to go on this side very close to the raw edge. We only want to put the double-sided tape on one side of the zipper. So our new approach to installing a zipper pocket is to have the zipper stop right prior of the curve. And in doing that, we reduce the wrinkles in the top, and all the wrinkles go to the pocket, which is on the underside, which looks really good. So where's the curve start? Well, for me, it looks like it starts right about here. So I'm just going to put a little mark right there, and that's where I'll start the zipper. As long as you're close to that location where the curve begins, you're fine. We're going to remove the double-sided tape. This is that 1/4 inch double-sided tape. Since we've measured over 1 inch or to create a 1/2 inch hem, if we put that right on the edge there, starting at that location, we should get the zipper to look pretty good from the top side. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, that's good. And we're not concealing the zipper's teeth here because there's no sun exposed to the, no sun going to be exposed to it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here and I'm going to match it up with the mark that we made with that scribe ball pencil. And we're going to do this all the way down. When we get to the other curve, I'll show you what we do there. Here we are at the other end, and I believe the curve is beginning right about there. So I'm going to cut the zipper just a little bit long because we're going to put a tab on this of binding to create the stop. So probably a ½ inch or so, right about there. And that will basically mean that the zipper will work almost up to that point. So we're going to take the other half of this off because we have to put the slider on, and I don't know which end the slider goes on. So we're going to go all the way to this end. Okay, so which one is the box and which one's the pin? Okay, so this is the box. So this is the side that the slider goes on. It doesn't go on the side with the pin. What's nice about that is that I can finish the end of this one with a stop because it's going to start over there. So I'm just going to put it on this just to temporarily keep from losing it. So we'll put it on this other side and I'll set this aside. And now let's concentrate on this side. So I'm going to lift this up a little bit and I'm going to touch it with a hot knife just to seal that end. You could use the R blade for this, but this will work like that. Okay. So I've taken a piece of binding. This is the binding that comes in the kit, and this reinforces the end of the zipper. And I'm going to use double-sided tape, and we're just going to fold it in half like that. But before I do that, I'm going to touch these ends with a hot knife just to keep them from unraveling here. This end and this end. There we go. I put double-sided tape on this, and we're going to put this on right on the end, and not try to have the zipper poke out of this end, kind of conceal it. There we go. There's a beautiful stop, and it reinforces it. Now we're going to take this to the machine. There is a little dog ear to this, and you could use a hot knife, but I'm just going to use scissors here, and we're going to cut it off like that. I could come back and touch that up with a hot knife. So I'm going to sew the zipper on, and I'm going to probably start from this end because I'm going to sew with the canvas up on top, because the stitch on top always looks better than the stitch on the bottom. Let me cut this off. Okay, so we're going to start here. And I've got my needle in center position. I'm just going to use the inside of the center foot as a guide, and I'm sewing 6mm stitch length and a size 20 needle. And we'll do a little bit of reversing there, and we're going to sew to this corner right about there. Bury the needle. Needle comes up slightly so that we can pivot on the needle and we don't get a skip stitch. We're going to turn it around here. We're going to lower our foot. Make sure you lower your foot and sew this side. And we're going to get up to our zipper. It's coming up soon. And sew down that. I'm just following this curve. Okay, and then now I'm right beside the zipper. Now that did kick it off a little bit from that edge. That's all right. I just want that foot right up against the zipper. Let's make sure we're checking. Yeah, we're sewing through the zipper beautifully. The stitch looks good on the bottom. So we are good to go. We're going to sew down all this edge and finish it up to the other end, just like we did there. Now we didn't show it, but when we came up to the zipper stop, I did a little bit of reversing here. So that just reinforces it. Then we just sewed down up here and then reversing here. Now, this is the forward pocket as it's labeled. We're going to do the exact same thing to the aft pocket now.
Next up, we'll baste and sew the tail and pockets in place on the forward and aft edges.
This is the outside surface. This is my center, and this is the aft edge. So I'm going to just transfer that to this side, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some scissors and I'm going to cut a notch, just a small triangle in it. That way I don't have to find it. So there we go. And we'll do the same thing over there to the forward middle position. I should have did that with the outside surface facing up because that's the next step to install the pockets. So I'm going to flip it so that the outside surface is facing up. So I should see my pout and my sout. So this is the aft edge. This is the tail, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half to find the center. Remember, it's extra long, so it doesn't have to be exactly at the center of spot, but there's where it is approximately, and I'm just going to cut a small triangle in that. There we go. And I'm going to set this aside. So along this aft edge, we're going to put basting tape, and this is the outside surface. The urethane side is down here. Going to go all the way to the other end, and we'll show you what's next. I'm going to peel off the transfer paper all the way to the middle position, and we're going to take our tail and we're going to find that middle position, which is right there, and we're going to match it up to this edge, and we're going to carefully baste to the left or the right. We're going to go to my right and matching up the edges as we go. It is necessary that you apply pressure to this to make sure it stays basted. After we're done, we're probably going to use the grip clips just to make sure that everything stays together, but we still have to put the pocket on it. So we're going to go all the way to the end, and when we get to the curve, I'll show you what that looks like, because the curve does do some strange things. What do you know? We're at the curve. So here's the curve. The fabric has to shrink up a little bit, and this curve's not too drastic, so it's not going to be a big deal, but you can expect it to bubble up a little bit. Just make sure you match up the raw edge like we are, and then press it down, and then let's do the other side just in the same manner. Okay, this is long. We intend it to be long, but there's where it starts, so I'm going to just put basting tape on here, and we do need, if you don't do this to the basting tape, it doesn't stick well to this acrylic. So we're going to go all the way down to the end on top of the tail, just like we did before. So we peeled off the transfer paper to the middle position, which is right there where our little cutout is. And we made a cutout also in this at the middle position. This is our aft pocket. This is our aft edge. Make sure you get the right pocket on. Start at the middle and baste to the left and baste to the right, matching up the edges. And make sure that the urethane coated side, or the side with the zipper, is facing up, because this is going to turn around and be sewn to the underside of the top. So zipper is facing up. Okay, so notice that this is short. It's supposed to be short because we don't want to sew the pocket closed. That's why we designed it that way. These are grip clips. They're phenomenal. What I like to do is I like to put these clips on, especially at the curve, to make sure that nothing moves when I'm sewing. And then I actually will put a few on over here because we are going to have to take this all to the sewing machine, and I don't want it to come apart. Now we're going to baste from this side and repeat the process. I'm going to put the magnetic guide on a 1/2 inch, and I like to do it on the side like this, and the needle's in the center position. And we're going to start sewing on this end. Let's see, this is our first stitch of our semi-flat felled seam. So we're going to start here, and I'll do a little bit of reversing here. I should hold my trailers, but okay, I'm going to take off this clip, and we're going to sew a 1/2 inch from this edge, trying to be as consistent as possible as we sew. So take your time doing this. This is not going to be a visible stitch, but it does make the edge nice and straight. Pretty easy. We'll go all the way to the other end. Now it's time for our top stitch. So what we want is we want to fold this so that the stitch goes here, so it creates kind of like a shingle. Not that water's going to run in there because we're going to have our tubing there. So the seam allowance goes over towards the top. It doesn't go over here. So we're going to fold it back towards the top. We're going to splay it out on that first stitch. And this stitch we want to be really, really careful about. And because of this curve, what I like to do is I actually like to turn it kind of like up in the air like this, and that makes it a little bit easier to sew it. So I think the cameraman's going to probably have to come to the other side when we get there. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the left side of my inside foot, and I'm going to put my stitch with it, I'm going to leave the needle in center position, though it could go to the right if you want to get closer. We're going to turn down the worker bee to probably a quarter speed, top end speed. That way I can be really, really precise with this. So here we'll do a little bit of reversing, but I don't want the reversing to go too deep. I want it to be hidden under the binding. That should do it. Okay, now splay it out. Don't forget to pull left and right, especially at this corner because it's rather stiff. And take your time doing this because everybody's going to see this stitch. So see how the tail's going up in the air like this? Cameraman's on this side. That makes it a little bit easier to do the curve. This is the hardest spot. I'm pulling both left and right, and I bury my needle when I want to make adjustments and make sure that I'm sewing through the tail on the underside, which I am. I can feel it. And if you have to, just sew an inch at a time, and then bury your needle and adjust. So I'll bury my needle. I'll make sure everything's splayed out, and we'll just keep sewing. Not that hard.
We're going to finish sewing this top stitch to the tail and the pocket. Then we're going to sew the zipper onto the top. After that, we'll just be repeating these steps for the other side. Now we'll baste and sew the pocket zippers to the Bimini top.
Okay, the urethane side is facing up. The pocket would be folded over to the underside like this and basted onto that. So we need to make sure the slider is on correctly. And it should be on like this so that the slider is facing up. If it isn't, you can take it off the end of the zipper and flip it. Okay, because of that, we need to put double-sided tape on this side. So we're going to flip the slider down, and we're going to put the 1/4 inch basting tape all along this edge like we had shown before. Okay, so now we can zip this on now that we have the double-sided tape on, and we can pull the slider all the way to the end. I can't get the slider all the way off because of that stop, so don't worry about it, just zip it up to the stop. Okay, so now let's come to the center. I'm going to move it over so you can see it. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to pull this back and we're going to lay it on here nice and flat so that everything is flat like that. And it's going to come under quite a bit of tension to do this. So what I will do is kind of flatten it to the best of my ability, increase it at that location with my hands or the canvas patterning ruler. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of spreading this apart with my fingers and then I'm creasing that seam allowance. We're removing the double-sided tape and I'll just do it all the way down to at least the edge of the table. And I'm going to start someplace close to the center, it doesn't have to be exactly in the center, and I'm going to baste this down, making sure that everything is flat. And then once we're happy with that, I'm going to adhere it down well. And if it didn't stick, you could use pins, though I don't really want to use pins through this because this is a urethane coating and I don't want it to leak because it is waterproof. Nice. Okay, because I don't want to use pins and it doesn't stick exceptionally well because of all this bulk, I'm going to actually just take some chalk and mark where the zipper is falling, where it is nice and flat. And I can actually put match-up marks like that too, which isn't a bad idea. So I'm just going to do this occasionally. I've got the worker bee turned down pretty slow. And I'm going to make sure it stays basted and sew right next to those teeth. Take your time with this. Every time you stop, check to make sure that your match-up marks, if you put them on there, are exactly where they need to be. Now, when we get to the end where the slider is, I'll show you what we do there. But notice I'm going to bury the needle and I'm going to check each one of my marks, make sure everything's nice and flat, not try to wiggle it around too much because it may become unbasted. So you can see, as I said, this comes unbasted, but because we have our little match-up marks, we can actually just make sure it's nice and flat, kind of baste it as we go, put my finger where I know it's correct, because everything's flat, and sew up to my finger, not through my finger. And then what I'll do is I'll stop right here with my needle buried so I don't lose my position. I'll straighten it out a little bit, and then I'll flatten out the pocket, make sure we're right on our X again, baste it down, and sew up to the next part. That's how easy it is. As we promised, we're coming up to that slider, and I'm going to come up pretty close to it, right about there. Bury the needle. Okay, lift the foot, and then take the slider and slide it past the foot. Sorry, my hands are going to probably be in the way, but I'm just moving it past there where we sewed. Then I'm going to lower my foot. Don't forget to do that, and then make sure everything's still lined up, which it is. Now I still need to put a stop in here, so let's stop here and let's cut another piece of binding. Okay, for some reason the zipper is long. Don't know why, but it doesn't matter because it does zip together. So I'm going to cut off the excess before I put my stop on there. And you could melt this with a hot knife, but the stop's going to pretty much take care of that. Okay, there's my binding that I've cut, and I'll put it on so that it's directly across from the other one. Sorry, my hands are going to be in the way for a second here. There we go. And that looks pretty good. Now we can sew. We're going to sew on top of this. Make sure that it's flat. And then I'm going to do some reversing, making sure they don't fall off of the end of that. And there we go. So this is what it should look like. It's fairly flat. There's a little bit of excess fabric in here, but the tubing is going to take care of that. Here's what it looks like on the underside. Here's how it zips up together. Really zips up nicely. So we've finished this side. We're going to do the exact same thing to the forward edge. The process is exactly the same with the tail and the pocket. And since we've already done it, I'm not going to show it to you.
So we didn't show the basting of the tail in the pocket, but here it is basted down just like we did on the aft side. This is the forward side. We are going to show the sewing of this because we do have to sew with the bulk of the fabric outside the throat of the sewing machine, and that means we have to sew from the stop end, the ends with the binding, whereas on the aft side we started at the starter box and starter pin for the zipper.
So I'm putting basting tape over here because I'm going to baste this down and pull the slider away. So I'm going to peel this off, and that way we have tape all the way. And I'm going to pull the slider out of the way because we don't want the slider to be in the way when we're sewing this. And I'm just going to come down here with my marks. That's where it really should be sewing. So let's take it to the machine. Okay, so I'm going to put this in, and my needle's in center position. It could be over to the right too, but I like it in the center position. It keeps it a little bit away from the teeth. And then I'm going to do some reversing in this starter, or stop I should say, but I don't want to sew off of it. Okay, and that should do it. And then we're just going to sew down these teeth. And then when I get to about here where my finger is, I'm going to stop. I'm going to bury my needle with it coming up slightly. I'm going to lift my presser feet, and then I'm going to take the slider and I'm going to zip it past that, and then I'm going to make sure everything is still basted nicely, which it looks like it is based on those. Now don't forget to lower your foot, otherwise it'll cause a jam, and continue to sew. We're coming to the starter box, and that's going to run into the presser foot, but all you can do is just go off of it a little bit. So in other words, I'm going to bang into it, so I'm just going to make it come past that presser foot a little bit like this, because I like to sew into that excess fabric and do some reversing here. That's good enough.
Trimming tails and then adding binding around the entire perimeter is next.
So what do we do with these tails before we do the binding? Well, we trim them off. So there's excess in there, so I usually just use a straight edge along the skirt edge, and I come out here like this. And then the binding doesn't like to take a 90-degree turn, so I want to make a radius so that it goes around this easily, and it also looks good. So I'm just going to do this to one of them, and we'll use this as a pattern for all of the corners. Okay, so like that. And I'm going to get my hot knife. The reason I'm using a hot knife is that if you get stitched close to the raw edge, because it's been hot knifed, binding, or the stitch I say, shouldn't usually come off easily because you have to go through all this melted edge. Okay, so now I'm going to use this as a template for the other ones. Line it up, mark it, cut it. Okay, we're going to feed our 1-inch binding. This is a bias binding that's included with the kit and I always like to test it. I've already screwed it on and I've moved it as close to the presser foot as I could possibly get. I did move the needle to the right. In my opinion, this is going to give me a good stitch, and then I positioned it left or right. And what you want to do is you want to sew a little bit of scrap to make sure you have enough tension, because sometimes when you're sewing binding, it needs more upper tension to get the bottom knot to look good. And I think that looks pretty good, but I'm going to give it one more twist, like that. Okay, we're ready to sew. Okay, look at this. This is awesome. See the pocket? It's a long way from this edge, so I don't have to worry about getting in the way of the binding. So I'm going to start here on the side here. This is the aft edge. Doesn't really matter where you start, but I like to start close to where the pocket is, and right about there. And I like to sew with the top side up because the top stitch usually looks better. So let's start here and make sure that we're happy with it. If we're not, we're going to make adjustments, but let's sew a little bit. Make sure you push the fabric into the exiting part of the binder. So I'm going to sew a little bit and check. Let's bury our needle and let's take a look at the bottom side. We're super close to the edge. I don't like that. So I'm going to take that up and nobody will be able to tell, and we're going to move the binder so that our stitch is a little bit further in, closer to the fold. So we'll rip up these stitches. Okay, so I moved the binder that way a little bit to get the stitch closer to the fold, and I've cut off the part we sewed because you get plenty of binding with this kit. And let's start here and check it out. Push it up into the exiting part of the binder, like I said. Now let's bury the needle. Check it out now. Oh yeah, much better. Okay, we're gonna keep going. If I pay attention to this spot right here, it won't feed in there. What I gotta pay attention to is where my finger's pointing. And sometimes I actually just push the fabric into there. And then you'll get it right up into the fold. Coming up to the curve and that pocket right here. So I need to make sure this gets folded out of the way so it doesn't interfere with anything. And now we're going to do the curve. Push it in, turn it sharp. Now we're around it. Keep sewing. So this is the Sailrite logo, and I did put basting tape in the middle just to keep it folded nicely because it's folded in half. And I'm going to put double-sided tape close to the top up here. This shows the world that you did it yourself. And we're going to sew this into the binding. It could be sewn here as well, but we didn't do that. So it's going to kind of be upside down, but at least it shows that you did it yourself. So I'm going to put it in here on the underside, not the top side. And when we sew our binding, that will sew it into place. Just make sure it doesn't move while you're sewing. So let's get up to that point. And it's getting ready to go in the binder. I just have to make sure that it doesn't get folded up anywhere. It goes into the mouth. That looks like it's going to do well. Good, so we got the logo sewn in. Okay, when I get around this corner, this is the spot where we began, and you'll see what I do there. So let's just get around the corner, and then we're gonna cut the binding and overlap it. almost there. Okay, so now I have plenty. You can see that at this juncture it would overlap quite a bit. So I'm going to take my hot knife with the R blade installed this time, and I'm going to cut it perpendicular to the edge. Right there. So now we have a sealed binding edge, and I'm going to sew a little bit further, and then I'm going to do this by hand. So let's just get over here. Okay. I'm going to bury my needle, and then I'm going to lift my foot, and I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to tuck this in by hand so that I get a pleasing look mainly on the top side, which is what we're on. And I think that looks pretty good. It's about a 3/4 inch overlap. I'll lower the foot, and I'm going to try to keep my fingers out of the way, and I'm going to sew this. It's a little bit thick here, so I'm going slow. And then I'm going to just reverse. And that's it. So it's a pretty good overlap, pretty good transition.
If you'll be using the adjustable webbing straps that are included in the kit, it's now time to attach the strap eyes to our tubing.
In order to zip the Bimini top on, we had to cut some of the strapping tape so that we could release the bows, and then we zipped on both sides. Make sure you get the forward side going the right direction the way you designed it, and the aft side obviously the right direction, because there is a difference in the shape of the frames. Okay, so what we have yet to put a snap in this, but we haven't tensioned it all the way, but I want to pull the Bimini so that it's the same on both sides. So we're at like 44 3/4, and I want to make sure that on the other side, the starboard side, we're the same. Yeah, we're at 44 3/4, so it's pulled in the center of the frame. So currently we have strapping tape in place. We need to put the webbing straps on, and to do that we need a strap eye to be over here. So I like the strap eyes to be about 1.5, no more than 2 inches from the top after it's centered. So I'm just using this ruler, and I've already marked it where I want the strap eye to stop. So that's 1.5 inches from that edge, and we're going to do that on all the bows. These stainless steel strap eyes come in the frame kit, so if you didn't get a frame kit and you need them, you can just order them at Sailrite. So there's my mark, and I want this to be fore and aft, or in the direction of wherever my strap will be. So I'm going to mark this spot right there. Okay, good. And now we need to drill holes. This is a spring-loaded center punch, and it's a good idea to keep your drill bit from wandering. I do it about 6 times. So I have an 1/8 inch drill bit, and I'm just putting some cutting oil on there. This is an 1/8 inch drill bit, and I just want to go through this top surface. Like that, and then we're going to do the same thing up here. Now we're going to ream it out with a 5/32 inch bit, like that, and the same thing up here. This is a marine, what do we call it? Let's see. This is called rivet stainless steel for marine fittings. It's 5/32. It's going to go in like this, and then you need to use a riveting tool, and we're going to be installing it in our tubing, so like that. And then you do need to press down hard. I'm going to try to keep my hands out of the way. It's stainless steel, and I do recommend that you wear eyeglasses or glasses, safety glasses I mean, because the mandrel is going to pop out of the end. There we go. Now I'll put the one in the bottom. Okay, and we just have to do this to all the bows at about 1.5 inches up from the edge of the dodger. Nice.
Included in the kit is adjustable webbing straps, 4 of them. It's now time to show you how to make them.
The kit comes with webbing And this is an acrylic webbing in either black or white. We need to cut 3 strips for each webbing strap that you'll need to make, and the first one is cut to 4 inches. So I'm just using the R blade for this. I changed it out from the blade we were using. 4 inches. The next one is 12 inches. And then the next one is the length from strap eye to strap eye, or wherever you're attaching it. For us, it's 42 inches. So we're going to take the 4-inch piece, and I'm going to put some of the double-sided tape just on the end of it. Doesn't matter the side, obviously. And peel this off. And then we're going to take this buckle. You can see there's a larger side and a smaller side. We're going to go through the larger side, and it's going to go through like this. And it's going to be folded so the ends are flush. Okay, so that one's done. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take the 12-inch piece, and I'm going to put some double-sided tape, just 2 inches or so, on each side, on one side. And then we're going to peel this off. So we're going to put it in the smaller end, and we're going to put it in the side that is raised. You can see this is raised here, so like this. And then I'm just going to fold it back to about 1/3 of its distance. I don't have to measure, just like that. And then on this side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these strap eyes, and it's going to go, and I'm going to flip this around just so I can more easily work with that. So the hook goes on, this is the hook part, goes on so that it faces up. In other words, up where the two pieces of webbing come together. Then it just butts up to this one, and then I move this up and then strap it down. So this is what you should get, and we are going to take this over to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew it before we assemble the rest of it. So in a way, there's a webbing loop here and a webbing loop here. We're going to do a box X in this one, and a box X in this one, and a box X here. I'm only going to show one. So let's start over here where the hook is. First, I need to move my needle to the left, and I've got my stitch length to about 3 to 4 millimeters in the reverse and about the same. So I'm going to lower my foot, and I'm going to sew so the presser foot is just up against that metal, and I'm going to sew forward and reverse, and then forward to this corner, needle buried, coming up slightly, lift the foot, pivot on the buried needle, sew down to here, right before we get to the end, needle coming up, lift, pivot, drop. Right, I'm going to do reverse a little bit to get in there. Needle coming up, lift, pivot, drop. And then I'm going to sew to here, which is where we started. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the foot, I'm going to pivot, and I'm going to aim for here. Now it doesn't have to be totally accurate. Needle's off to the right, so it's a little bit harder to gauge where you're going to land, but I'm going to try to hit it. Yeah, didn't do too bad. Now I'm going to lift the needle, pivot, come across the bottom, and I'm going to sew to this corner, and then I'm going to lift, and I'm going to do an X to this corner. Let's see if I can hit it. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, right when I hit that corner, I'm going to do 1, 2, 1, 2. In other words, 2 reverses and 2 forwards. And there is a box X stitch. Now the kit may come with a different color thread. If you're sewing, there's only 2 colors of webbing, black and white. I really recommend that if you have black thread, sew it with the black webbing. And if you have white thread, if it didn't come in the kit, sew the white webbing with white thread. It looks better. If you don't have that, you can just use the colored thread that may come with your kit. It depends on the color of fabric you select. Now we're going to take our longer piece from strap eye to strap eye, or mounting position to mounting position. We're going to go through the small side, and then we're going to go through the large side just like this. Okay, so that's what you should get. And then this buckle that comes in the kit, and we're going to put it on, and we're going to wrap this to the underside like this and sew it. And I'm just going to put double-sided tape there so we don't have to, we can take this over the sewing machine and do 2 tasks at once. So here, take that off, and here we just want about a 3/4 inch end, which is approximately there. Okay, now this will go on. So in other words, this is down. This goes in from the bottom, like that. And this is a loop lock. It's just keep the end from trailing around. We have our hook over here, down. So that means the hook over here would go down as well, but we want it to go through this way like this. So the hook is like this, and that way this is on the bottom, same as it is over here. Okay, and this one, I'm going to put some double-sided tape on it, and we're going to do this one at 2 inches. Okay, and it doesn't have to be exact, but I like to keep it similar for all the straps. So I'm going to fold this back, and I'm just going to use this board, and I'm going to pull it until it is 2 inches from the fastener, like that, and this would be down like that. Okay, this one's going to have a box X, so we're going to start there. I'm not going to show it because it's the same process. This one, I'm not going to do a box X, it's just a strap, so I'm going to pull this through, and all I'm going to do for this one is do 2 rows of a straight stitch, reversing several times. So I move my needle to the right, and I'm sewing as close to that loop lock as possible, and I'll do forward and reverse a few times, and then I'll lift my foot, wiggle the balance wheel, and I will do forward and reversing a few times here on the end to keep that from popping up. Okay, and that is done. So I'm just going to finish the box X on the hook, and then I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. 2 box X stitches, another box X stitch, 2 straight stitches, and another box X. Our strap is done. Now we need to make 3 more.
We'll secure the Bimini with our adjustable webbing straps, and now we'll install snaps in our tubing and our Bimini top.
We've attached a webbing strap to the eye on our frame. Then we're going to attach it to the strap eye that we put on the frame. And the way these work is that this one tensions, as you can see, and this one releases. So right now we want to put it under some tension on all 4 of the bows. Okay, so I put a level on the frame, and looks like our bubble is pretty close. I can go a little bit more this way. No, actually I got to go the other way, so I'll go to this one and tighten it a little bit. That's pretty good. The point is we have it pretty tight, really. The sides don't have the snaps in, so they're loose, but the middle is pretty tight, and it's level. So I'm taking a tape measure or a ruler all the way to the ground, and what I want is the skirt edge on both the starboard and port side, on this forward edge I think it is, to be the same. The skirt can be non-centered, and you want it to be centered, so you'll be able to pull it starboard or port by just applying pressure. On the bottom side we have these pockets that are going to have a snap, so I'm going to pull the fabric around until it looks good, and we can apply a snap here or even up here to make this edge look really good. So wherever you'd like, but I'm going to apply some tension on this, then I'm going to use a spring clamp, and I'm going to clamp all of them, make sure that I'm happy with the way it looks, and move it around if necessary. So that one's clamped, and then I'm going to come over here and we're going to wrap this around and try to make it look good too. We're going to do this to all 4. So the corners look pretty good. We have a spring clamp on all of them, just kind of temporarily holding them in place. And I'm going to put a snap down here. I can also put a snap up here or anywhere in this area if it helps the outside cover look good. So I'm going to remove my spring clamp, and I'm going to move this over. I'm going to take a marker and mark at this locale. So I'm basically up about 1.25 inches from the bottom edge, and anywhere in that area is probably pretty good. So the snap would go right about there, which should cause good tension. So we're going to put a stud right here. I clamped my fabric up so that I don't accidentally drill into it. And this is the spot we marked, so we're going to use the punch to make a dimple. I'm going to try to keep my hands out of the way as best as possible. Right there. about 6 times. There we go. We're not exactly on that spot, but that's not a big deal. Then I'm going to use an 1/8 inch drill bit. We have already put some cutting oil on the bit to prolong its life. There we go. The riveting gun and the Sailrite surface mount stud die don't come in the kit, but we really recommend this. So I'm going to screw it into my riveting gun. You don't have to buy our riveting gun. It'll work in any riveting gun. The stainless steel rivets do come in the kit, so I'm going to insert it, and then the stainless steel studs, snap studs, come in the kit. And we're going to push this in and make sure it sits flat on the base. There's a rubber O-ring that it fights against a little bit. So just like that. It's almost perfect. It's not quite, but it'll work. We're going to insert this in that 1/8 inch hole that we drilled. And what I like to do is you have to make sure that the die is all the way up against the tubing. And I like to put my thumb up here. For one, it keeps the mandrel from popping me in the face, but that keeps all the pressure against the tubing. And I put my fingers behind it, and then I'll just depress the lever a few times until that mandrel breaks. This is a stainless steel rivet, and look at that. It's super solid, it doesn't rotate, great installation. So right now we have looseness here. This is my first fastener. I'm going to pull the pocket around over top of the stud and look to see if I apply too much tension, I get a little bit of bubble there. So that actually looks pretty good like that. So I'm going to take my marker. I can feel the stud right there. You probably can't see it, but it's right there. And I marked the pocket. Into our snap tool, we'll install the button that's included in the kit. And it just goes around this rubber O-ring to hold it in place. And then this is a hard action socket that comes in the kit. That's what we recommend. So make sure you put the button on this side and the socket on the inside. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it over my spot, and this punches a hole and sets the snap all with one squeeze of the lever. Looks like I need a little bit more pressure. There we go. All right, and if it's installed right, it won't roll, and it doesn't. We just take that and snap it in place. Now this takes all the wrinkle from the corner and puts it in the pocket, and that's what we intend. Now another snap could go up here, but I'm not going to do that until I get all the snaps at about this location on all the tubing in place, and then we can inspect it to see if this will actually help. So I'm hoping you can see that. It's a pretty smooth application. And if I didn't put any other snaps in it, but if you wanted to, you could pull that out by pulling the fabric back and putting another snap on, obviously not on this side, on the underside there. But I don't think we need it. I'm gonna go over here and test this one as well. So if I pull on the pocket here, does that improve it? Yeah, it pulls it out a little bit, but it's ever so slightly. So it's your choice. You have plenty of snaps and plenty of studs and rivets in the kit.
Our 2-bow Bimini Skin Kit is now complete. This Bimini was made using Sattler Yachtmaster, which has a durable, water-resistant finish. As mentioned earlier, this kit comes in several choices of fabric canvas options. Check out the video link in the description to see what the advantages and differences are between those fabric choices. Then order your Bimini Skin Kit from Sailrite today. If you like this free tutorial video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell to be notified of new tutorial videos when they become available. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.